Means we need to wait for the stream to get fired up across the internet. Now, we do multi-stream here, so you can kind of find us all over the place. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Periscope, but our home base, of course, is YouTube, and they're always a little bit slow to get the stream going the way that we need it, and we always like to check to make sure that it's good. And we're almost there. It's looking like we are online, so let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful, sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. We help them navigate through the criminal justice system. And over our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a thing called justice, and it all starts at the top. The politicians, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and I to follow, but sometimes they have some difficulty doing so themselves. And so that's why we started this program. It's called Watching the Watchers, so that together we can shine the big, beautiful spotlight of transparency and accountability back down upon that very system with the hope of encouraging some meaningful change. And that's why we're so grateful that you are here and with us today. We've got a lot to get into. If you've been following us for some time, we've been talking a lot about the election. We are going to get into some of that today. There is some new information floating around that leads me to believe that the Congressional Republicans are really going to try to mount a serious offensive in Congress during the time that the votes are counted coming soon on January 6th. So we want to talk about what that strategy looks like and maybe identify some people who are going to be assisting in that cause. We also want to take a look at the Senate, see what they're talking about, because the Senate is integral. They are necessary in order for the Republicans in the House to succeed in any way. They need to have the support of some senators. So there's some rumblings around of who that might be. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the Biden stuff, particularly with his brother, James or Jim Biden, is currently under investigation for a number of different things. A new article came out today over from the Federalist. Want to talk a little bit about that and what that looks like. If you're not a regular of the program, we did cover a lot of the Hunter Biden stuff prior to the election, and it's looking like, if this thing goes the way that everybody else is currently thinking it goes and Joe Biden is elected, well, he's going to be moving into the White House with all of his family members. Many of them are under a lot of scrutiny from the very government that Joe Biden seeks to control. So we want to talk about that. That's what we do here. It's called Watching the Watchers. But before we get into any of that, I want to make sure we start with this Porkulus bill. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. Massive $2.4 trillion bill that is currently, I think it's sitting on Trump's desk literally right now. It passed the House and the Senate in the dead of night. They had about 2 hours to read 5,500 pages of documents, and they voted on it. And so you're welcome, America. Here's a big fat $2.4 trillion bill right in your face. Merry Christmas to all of you. So we want to get into all of that. We will. Before we do, I want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button. Join us. We go live at this time every day of the week. We may even be broadcasting on Christmas. Maybe we're going to see what my mom has to say about that. We're going to see where that goes. But we do a lot of this stuff. We want you to be a part of the program. So hit that button, give us a thumbs up, and share the program. There's a live chat that takes place during the show, but before and after the program, I'd invite you over to our Discord server. I'm going to go through some slides, and the slides are going to be available at the end of the program over there in Discord. It's where we talk before and after the show. It's kind of a persistent chat, so we want you to be over there as well. As I am going through the material, Miss Faith and our lovely moderator, Mr. Ma, are over taking screenshots of some of the super chats that come in or any of the good questions. We're going to save those for the end of the program, and we're going to make sure that all of those get answered as well. So don't forget to send those if you do have questions or you just want to participate in that way. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of the program. We're starting off with the Congressional Porkulus bill. We spent some time talking about this yesterday. We were going through the bill. Actually, all of Twitter and most people were who are sort of plugged into the political world got notice that this thing was coming up for a vote late yesterday, and it was a 5,500 page bill, literally 5,500 pages of documents. It was a two-part bill. About 800 billion of that 2.4 trillion or 900 billion, I think it was, is going to be designated for COVID relief, COVID stimulus, that type of stuff. The remainder of the bill is part of just a regular government spending bill. This is just kind of what they do. And so Literally, this bill came out. They had about 2.5 hours or 3 hours to read it and then decide what to do about it and vote on it. They did that all yesterday in both houses. The House and the Senate did this. And it's now presumably sitting on Trump's desk. We don't know what he's going to do. He may be signing it today. We just don't know, because the big problem here was they're trying to avoid a government shutdown. So yesterday we went through the bill. We were identifying all of the different pork that's in there. And for those of you who don't know what pork is, it's this idea that Congress people, our government officials, will pass a spending bill and they'll fill it full of pork. And really what that means is it's fat. It's sort of unnecessary stuff that they're able to take back to their home districts and say, look, I brought all this money back to Phoenix, Arizona, or Scottsdale, Arizona. I brought all this money back to, Boise, Idaho, wherever they're going. They put this stuff in the bill so they can, really bring home the pork to their constituency back in their home states. And so we were going through and seeing what is really in this bill. We saw hundreds of millions of dollars going to different countries like Nepal, Cambodia. We talked about the Sudan, I think was getting $700 million. 1.4 billion was going over to the Asia something initiative. So what we're doing here is we're taxing a bunch of Americans. You and I pay taxes on basically everything we do, every waking moment, every transaction. Somebody's taxing something somewhere, unless you're transferring Bitcoin, but they're trying to figure that out also. So lots of taxes. And what they're doing is they're just taking it all and they're sort of doling out to many Americans who are in need, making less than $75,000 a year. They're going to give you a whopping $600. There you go. That's your stimulus. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy it. That is yours. Thank you, federal government. Even though they've been taxing you for basically your whole life, they're just going to kind of give that back to you. And so many people are saying, oh, that's nice. Very grateful of them. And we see, people on both sides of the aisle, a bipartisan ripoff of America. Nancy Pelosi was saying this was significant. Senator Hawley was also saying, well, the only reason he voted yes for it was because families need support. And so the Congress people are doing a nice job right now, patting themselves on the back, saying, man, we're really working for those American people, even though we're sending literally billions of dollars overseas out to other parts of the world. And before, there's any sort of backlash against those statements, I am for taking care of people who need to be taken care of. I want, humanity to do well. I consider myself to be a pretty empathetic person, and I don't want to see people throughout the world suffering. However, can America afford to take care of the entire planet? The answer is no, and we have a lot of problems right here in our home country. A lot of people are literally bursting at the seams. I'm a criminal defense attorney. We get to see a lot of that. We get to see what happens when people snap. We get to see that DUI charges are up across the board. We have domestic violence cases are rising through the roof. I'm also involved with a nonprofit where we work with people who've lost other people to suicide. Suicide numbers are through the roof. Kids are a mess. The whole thing's a mess, in large part because of what the government has done in terms of locking down the entire society. So they lock you down, they say you can't work, and then when they've been taking your money for your whole life, now we need the help of the government. They're going to dole out $600 right over to you. So that is our Congress in action. And on this issue, there's some bipartisan support on this. So typically I would not be aligning myself with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but I'm in total agreement with her here. She posted this on Twitter yesterday, says this is why Congress needs time to actually read this package before voting on it. Members of Congress have not read this bill. It's over 5,000 pages, arrived at 2 p.m. today, and we are told to expect a vote on it in 2 hours. This isn't governance. This is hostage taking. And she's sort of retweeting a little bit of a post over here from the Hollywood Reporter that says the COVID-19 stimulus bill would make illegal streaming a felony. So why is illegal streaming in the COVID-19 bill? Well, because they can't, they can't cram it in anywhere else. So they're just going to put it in this huge, massive omnibus bill that includes everything that every single congressperson wants. And like Alexandria Ocasio says here, it's hostage taking. And don't think that this is not by design. They've been working on this bill for 6 months, longer than that. I think the original bill was introduced earlier in January, and then it goes through a number of different name changes and different committees, and then they got to reconcile the bills from across the parties. It's a joke. And so 6 months later, since they really started working on it, we get this ridiculous bill that comes out that really kind of does a little bit for all of the Congress people, but not so much for the American people. So now they're going to be making illegal streaming a felony. Somehow that has something to do with coronavirus. I don't know. But if you think that this was not orchestrated, they're hard up against a government shutdown deadline. So they have got 6 months to figure this out, but they wait until the last minute and they say, oh my goodness, if we don't get this done immediately, the government is going to shut down. Nobody wants that, do you? No, Republicans don't want that. Democrats don't want that. They want to keep it going. They want to keep the skids well-greased, well-oiled, because there's a lot of people making a lot of money off of this. So once they hit that hard deadline, now it's everybody hit the panic button. We got to get this bill passed. Everybody sit down, shut up, and vote it. You don't need to read it. It's 5,500 pages. That's okay. We'll tell you exactly what's in it. All you need to know is you got to vote for this because you have a D next to your name, and we need this to happen. You have an R next to your name if you want support the next go-round. There's a lot of constituencies that are going to be very satisfied by this bill. It's not going to be the American people, but who cares about them? It's going to be everybody else who wants a little bit of the grift. They're all getting in on it. And so they have nothing to do. They have no choice but to just sit down, shut up, and vote for the bill. AOC, we go back to her. She says, and by the way, it's not just members who need to see the bill ahead of time. You do. The American people do. The public needs to see these bills with enough time to contact their rep to let them know how they feel. Members are reeling right now because they don't have time to consult with their communities. And I could not possibly agree more with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on this. I think what Congress did last night, they should all be ashamed of themselves. They should all be embarrassed for what they have done to the American people. They had a bill that they knew what was in it, and they threw it on the table. They had 2 hours to vote. By AOC's own admission, she is a House representative. She's sitting in there and she's telling us what they're doing. 2 hours, read the bill. Otherwise, you just don't read it. How can you read 5,500 pages in 2 hours? You can't do it. It's not possible. So we're going to show you a breakdown of that. Senator Rand Paul does have a good breakdown on how impossible it is to read the bill. But Congress, they just are going to do what they want to do. We go over, and as I said, this is a bipartisan consensus. We go over to the Republican Kelly Armstrong over from North Dakota, and he says the same thing. Posted this on Twitter yesterday. We've had a 5,500-page bill for a little over an hour now. Instead of getting COVID relief out to the people months ago, we're being forced to vote on this monstrosity without having any meaningful time to go through it. This is insane. That's what he says. It is insane, right? How this would be like going to school and trying to present something and or taking a test or having a teacher say, yeah, I'm going to give you the test, the final exam right now on the first day of school. You go, I don't have enough time to prepare for that. I can't reasonably sit down and consider what's going into that. And the teacher just says, that's too bad, just do it anyways. And you did it, and the teacher passes you, and everybody gives you a pat on the back, and you get a star, and everybody goes home, and you show your parents the star, and you put it on the refrigerator. The whole thing is just a joke. Let's see what else is in this bill, because yesterday we talked about it. Twitter was going a Twitter yesterday that everybody was trying to find these little snippets, and we have some more that are now out now. More ridiculous nonsense. So we see here there was $77.6 million for annual and deferred maintenance, and then another $115 million. So we're looking at just shy of $200 million total for the Wild Horse and Burro program, as authorized by public law. Didn't even know that we had that, but apparently they're going to get about $200 million to a wild horse and burro program. Now, I don't know what the extent of this is. I don't know, is this a problem? Do we really need to be funding wild horses and burro programs? Where is that? Is this an issue? Are there wild horses running rampant all throughout the United States? I don't know. Not in Arizona, there aren't. I've been to California. I've been to a lot of places around the United States, and I haven't seen wild horse problems. I don't know what this goes to address, but my guess is neither do the other Congress people. They probably have no idea what this is going towards, and they're okay with that because some congressperson somewhere probably has a company that deals with wild horses and burros, and they need some more funding to do whatever they need to do, right? This is somebody's constituency back in their home state, and they need to bring this pork home to them and say, look, we got a wild horse problem around here and wherever it is, and here I am, Senator so-and-so, bringing home some additional funding to help the wild burros. You're just going, what the hell are we talking about right now? We keep going on. More money is going over to Pakistan. So we saw a lot of this foreign aid, money going all around the world. We had Nepal, Cambodia. There's even some statements in here that money was going over to Venezuela and the Sudan, and Israel, I think, has $1.5 billion for the Iron Dome and some other weapon defense systems. We talked about that yesterday. Billions, literally billions of dollars are going overseas. And for what? Well, in Pakistan, this is what they have. So of the funds appropriated under Title III of this act, that are made available for Pakistan, not less than 15 million shall be made available for democracy programs, and then not less than 10 million shall be made available for gender programs. So I don't even know what that means. I don't know if this is the same type of gender stuff we're talking about in the United States. I don't know, what a democracy program is in Pakistan or why we got to pay $15 million for it. If the Pakistanis want a gender program and democracy, well, can't they pay for it? Why is America paying for that? There's a lot of people here who need this money to help them get through their Christmas, to get through, to pay their rents. But that money is okay for foreign aid. The American people just get $600. And this isn't $600 a week, $600 a month. This is it. $600. This is your stimulus. But meanwhile, 15 million here, 1.5 billion to the Israelis, 700 million over to the Sudan, and so on. It's just mind-numbingly insane that these are our own elected officials. And you don't even have the time to object to any of this stuff. You can't even pick up the phone and call your congressman, because by the time you identify a provision in this garbage bill that is worth objecting to, then it's too late. They probably have already voted for it. You're going to call them along with every other American. It's all going to go to voicemail. The senators and the House of Representatives, they're just going to go and move forward because they fall in line. Mitch McConnell's patting himself on the back. Nancy Pelosi's patting himself on the back. And Congress overwhelmingly voted for this bill. Overwhelmingly. Let's listen to what Rand Paul has to say. He took to the Senate floor yesterday, pretty upset. Here is Senator Rand Paul.
If free money were the answer, if money really grew on trees, why not give more free money? Why not give it out all the time? Why stop at $600 a person? Why not $1,000? Why not $2,000? Maybe these new free money Republicans should join the Everybody Gets a Guaranteed Income caucus. Why not $20,000 a year for everybody? Why not $30,000? If we can print up money with impunity, why not do it?
Yeah, so Rand Paul is more of a fiscal conservative, fiscal Republican. He doesn't want just the printing of money. Him and his father, Ron Paul, they talk a lot about monetary policy and the Federal Reserve and, hyperinflation and those types of issues. His point here, I think, is well taken, right? Where is this money coming from? I think largely it's just being printed, and I'm not an economic finance guru. I don't know what I know what it is, but I couldn't have a very articulate conversation with somebody who knows, all about qualitative easing, for example, right? There's a lot that goes into these big decisions, but what he's saying here is, where does the $2.4 trillion come from? Where does the $900 billion, where does that actually come from? Do we have that money? No, the U.S. is in massive debt. Our deficit every year is growing and growing and growing. And the Trump administration didn't do much to help that, quite frankly. They were spending just as bad as anybody has ever been spending. So he is now saying, where does this money come from? Doesn't matter. They're just going to print it. So to his point, he's kind of doing the slippery slope argument. Okay, well, what good is $600? Why don't we just give everybody 20 grand? And I think it's a valid point. Where does the money come from? My response is, well, listen, if the government tells you can't work and they've been taxing you your entire life, then they should be able to fund you during the lockdown. I think that is very reasonable. If the federal government has been grifting off of your income for 20 years, well, and you need a little bit of help from the federal government, they should be fiscally responsible enough that they have a rainy day fund that they can give back to the people who paid for it in the first place. We said this, are the Congress people are making 170, 180, Nancy Pelosi's 220 grand. Are they going without a paycheck? Are they going to be suffering as a result of this bill? No, they're all going to get richer and do very well. But the people who they are supposed to be serving, now that we need some of the government help because they have been literally taking away our ability to go and make a living, it's necessary. They don't want to give it back. They want to keep the money. In fact, they don't have any money to give back because they've already spent it. They've probably sent it all overseas to the Sudan and to Cambodia and to Venezuela. Senator Rand Paul goes on. This is another clip from him.
The Treasury can just keep printing the money. That is, until someone points out that the emperor has no clothes and that the dollar no longer has value. To so-called conservatives who are quick to identify the socialism of Democrats, if you vote for this spending monstrosity, you are no better. When you vote to pass out free money, you lose your soul and you abandon forever.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, this is one of those times where it's so mind-numbingly frustrating that every single person in Congress is just on for the grift. They just threw out a big bucket of slop, and all of them are feeding right into the bucket. They're very, very hungry. Rand Paul posted on Twitter a couple of additional things. He says the deficit busting bill will be 5,593 pages long. If 250 words were per page, then that's 1.398 million words. If Congress people could read at an average American speed of 300 words a minute, and he says, quote, in parentheses, a big assumption, and I made that point yesterday. He said that a congressperson might read this in 4,660 minutes or 77.68 hours with no rest breaks. So we're talking about 2 full work weeks to read the bill, and they had 2 hours, according to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He says, my guess is big spenders in both parties will pass this without anybody ever reading it. Not me. I'm a no. Great news. He says Congress will in 3 years quit sending stimulus checks to dead people. Strong work, Congress. Sarcasm intended. He writes, until then, the dead will continue to vote and to cash government checks. Wouldn't want to rush something like that. So, there was a big sort of uproar from the American people, and even Twitter was out last night sort of trying to correct the record because there was a lot of tweets and a lot of people were very, very angry about what they were finding in this bill. And so Twitter came out and said, hold on a minute, hold on. The COVID portion of the bill, the $900 billion, that's not sending any money overseas. The money that's being sent overseas is a part of the other bill, which is just a regular fiscal bill. And so of the 2.4 trillion, well, 900 million of that is really going to the people in the form of stimulus. But if you do the math on it, if you say, okay, every single American who's going to be, getting a $600 check, it's not everybody, right? I'm not going to be getting one. It's people who make under a certain threshold of income. And so, I'm not going to get one. A lot of people, and not that I want one or need one, but I'm telling you, there's a huge portion of Americans who are not going to be getting any sort of compensation for this. And there are other people who are under that threshold who are also not going to be getting that stimulus bill. So now we're talking about 600 people, not for all 380 million Americans. We're talking about $600 for a very, very small subset of Americans that probably need a lot more than that, right? What does $600 get you? Does that get you, can you pay, is rent anywhere in the United States, for an apartment, $600? I don't know. Not in Arizona, not unless you want to, live unwell, right? Something that is feasible. $600 is a slap in the face as far as I'm concerned, and the government should be ashamed of itself. Rand Paul here, I think, is one of a few senators who voted no here. Here are the other 5 people. So we have 100 senators in Congress right now. 6 of them voted against this. The other 92, looks like 2 abstained. The other 92 voted yes. So Blackburn from Tennessee, Cruz from Texas, Johnson from Wisconsin, Lee from Utah, of course, Paul from Kentucky, and Scott from Florida. All of the other senators, they're basically dead to me. I don't know what they want. I can't bring myself to ever support any one of them ever again, which is a bummer because Josh Hawley, I think, over from Missouri, looked like a promising candidate. A lot of other people were talking fiscal responsibility. They were talking actual relief for the American people. They all voted yes for this garbage. So they're basically dead in my book. I don't think that I think that they really blew it with their chances for, ever sort of consolidating momentum in running for national office. Very, very disappointing. And listen, this is what the House looked like. The House of Representatives here, these are the people who voted no. You'll notice here, even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez voted no, right? And props to her for doing that. She could have easily just gotten in line. Ilhan Omar voted no. A lot of these people got issues with in terms of policy, but Justin Amash voted no. So he's a libertarian. He should have been a big no. We got some people from Arizona. We've got Raul Grahova, Paul Gosar, Andy Biggs, David Schweikert. So a lot of people from our home state here voting no. Even look at all these Democrats. A lot of Democrats voting no. Tulsi Gabbard. We have, who else? Any other big names here? Jim Jordan is a Republican from Ohio. He voted no. And, this is it, right? And so when we break this down, 85 people here who voted no, this is what the total demographics look like. This is how it broke down across Congress in the House of Representatives. 327 of them voted yes. 85 voted no. And you can see it's basically a bipartisan passing of the bill. 192 Democrats were joined by 134 Republicans. Between the two of them, we had 85 who voted no. The rest of Congress from around the entire country voted to pass this bill. And so I think it's still sitting at Donald Trump's desk. I would really hope that he would veto this thing. I think it's a veto-proof majority. Is that right? Yeah. So, they could override his veto. And that's it. That's how our government works. You're welcome, America. You're welcome, the American people. You get $600. Not all of you, just a handful of you. And the rest of the money is going to be going overseas, and it's going to go to Congress people. It's going to go to other people's special interest pork in their home states. And the relief that the American people need, non-existent. $600. Well done. Very nicely done. They get 2 hours to decide the bill. They do it 3 days before Christmas, and it's just business as usual in Washington, I suppose. So that is it for the Porkulus bill. Let's change gears a little bit. Let's talk about the election. The Republicans now have a plan to reverse course in the election that's going to take place in the United States House of Representatives. For a long time on this program, we've been talking about sort of how this works and breaking this down. Long story short is, right now, Joe Biden has 306 electoral votes. If he wants to win if Donald Trump wants to win the presidency, they have to do something about that. 306 electoral votes, that's too many. That is what the Constitution says. If you're over 270, you're good to go. That number's not officially in there, but he has met the threshold. So the Republican Party now needs to knock him under that number. Reduce it, the 306 down under 270 electoral votes. And if they're able to do that in the House of Representatives, the way they would do that would be when they count the votes. So the votes have now been cast and certified by the states. They've been cast by the electors in the various states. They go over to the House of Representatives. Mike Pence is the vice president. He's also the president of the Senate. So he goes through a process where there's tellers who open the ballots and count them, and then they hand them back to him. They tally them up. They give him the total vote, and he announces who the next president is. So during that process, when they're opening the certificates of ascertainment from the various states, and they're counting them, it's pertinent that people from both houses, senators and House representatives, they can object to those votes, and they can say, okay, while you're counting Pennsylvania, we don't think those should count. Here's why. We have 3 Supreme Court cases that are all garbage. The Supreme Court modified the rules on their own. We think it's unconstitutional. We've got Judge Alito, who also hinted that he thinks it's unconstitutional. We've got pending litigation in multiple courts. We're knocking on the door of the Supreme Court. We've got a number, thousands of affidavits from people who've testified that they saw fraud and so on. They say we object to those votes. Well, then what will happen is they'll break off into their constituent into their separate houses, and they will debate those issues. They'll come back. They'll have a floor vote. If there's enough votes to throw out that state's votes, then those votes don't count anymore. And so Joe Biden's total would be 306 minus whatever state got thrown out. So it was Pennsylvania and 20 votes. You do the math, there it is, right? So the goal is to drop him under 270 votes. If they're able to do that, and no candidate in the House of Representatives reaches the threshold of 270 electoral votes, that triggers a contingent election, which opens up a whole nother can of worms. The idea here then, according to the Republicans, they would make the argument that the states vote by delegation, which means at that point in time, every state would essentially get one vote. So the states would sort of, break up into their respective states, and then they would convene with their legislatures, and the legislatures would consolidate, and they would send a delegation, and each state would get one vote. Currently, my understanding is the Republicans control 26 state legislatures, 26 states. They have more. That's one more than the Democrats have. Therefore, if it went down to that, it would be a victory for Trump and the Republicans. That's one path. The alternative argument, which I'm now seeing floated around, that if this does come to fruition, the Democrats are going to argue that the provision that's talking about a state delegation doesn't really apply to the state delegation. So they're saying it should be just basically every state is considered a delegation that is made up of the people who are in Congress. Which is a long way of saying that it would just be a House vote, right? It would be all the House representatives who would vote. And currently the Democrats control the House of Representatives by a small margin. But if you divest this, if you sort of peel this back and make it a state level vote, then every state would get one vote. The Republicans would win. But if there's an alternative interpretation and the Democrats now are saying we can vote as an independent sort of per person vote in the House of Representatives, then that would give them the presidency. So now we're seeing some other arguments come out. Well, let's take a look at what the Republicans say that they are going to do. Now, I've been explaining that this strategy, I think, is, they call it a Hail Mary of their own accord, unless something changes, right? There's a lot of promises out there. There's a lot of floating around of these ideas that there's more to come. And there's a new Supreme Court case that is knocking on the door of the Supreme Court. We talked about that all yesterday. And if this is something that is successful, then that could really rattle a lot of congresspeople. They could say, okay, you know what? Yeah, the Supreme Court said that there was some fraud here, and it may shake some people loose. And so when it does come down to a floor vote, the Republicans could theoretically be successful. The numbers are difficult because the Democrats do control the House of Representatives. So presumably, even if in the Senate they could get all the Republican senators to vote in favor of disqualifying certain states' electoral votes, they still got to go over to the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives also has to have a floor vote. So you would need to get every single Republican plus flip a couple of the Democratic constituencies over there. We'll see if that happens. Now, the Republicans, it sounds like they are really consolidating their efforts here. This article comes from townhall.com. It says how the GOP plans to challenge the election results. President Trump on Monday met with a handful of Republican members of Congress about how to move forward with challenging the results of the 2020 presidential election. We see here this tweet from Mark Meadows. He says several members of Congress just finished a meeting in the Oval Office with President @Real Donald Trump, preparing to, quote, fight back against mounting evidence of voter fraud. So he posted this yesterday when we were just getting ready to hop on and do the program. So they had a meeting yesterday. We want to take a look at what happened there. This comes from Jake Sherman. He says, spotted in the West Wing today, GOP members, MT Grenay, we have Matt Gaetz, we have Jim Jordan, Representative Mo Brooks, and we have Rep. Louis Gohmert. They met with the president, multiple sources told him. He also says that Rep. Andy Biggs was there and Representative Scott Perry. Another person by the name of Chad Pergram over on Twitter. He says colleague Kristen Fisher confirms GOP reps Mo Brooks, Matt Gaetz, Louis Gohmert are in the Oval Office with Trump debating whether or not they should oppose certifying the Electoral College results before a joint session of Congress on January 6th. So those are some pretty big names. We've seen a lot from Matt Gaetz out of Florida. Representative Mo Brooks from Alabama has also been making a lot of news. He's sort of been somebody we've talked about several times. He's really been active in saying we're going to oppose this. He's trying to find a senator. Remember, you need one person from both houses, one person from the House, one person from the Senate. That is enough to raise an objection and then call for a debate about disqualifying those votes. Matt Gaetz was out speaking over this weekend. He was out at this was one of these Stop the Steal rallies. This was a Turning Point USA Student Action Summit. This was on Saturday. There was a lot of big speakers there. It was sort of a rally to unify people to continue the fight. This article comes over from Newsweek. It says Representative Matt Gaetz to join the GOP effort to overturn the Trump loss. I'm not going back to losing politely, he's quoted as saying. He's a Florida Republican. He's a close friend of Donald Trump. They're saying he's going to join a Hail Mary endeavor next month that's growing in popularity among his colleagues in the House for Congress to overturn the president-elect. And so you can see, right, there is a little bit of momentum here for the Trump team. Speaking at a conservative Turning Point USA Student Action Summit on Saturday, Matt Gaetz says he enthusiastically declared his support for Congress to formally contest Trump's loss at the ballot box on January 6th. They say it's a long shot effort that will undoubtedly fail, according to Newsweek, and act primarily as a symbolic loyalty test to the outgoing commander-in-chief. He says, quote, I'm joining with the fighters in Congress, and we are going to object to electors from states that didn't run clean elections, he says. He was met with cheers and chants of USA. Our friends in the media will breathlessly exclaim that we are attacking democracy. That's nonsense. Democracy is left undefended if we accept the result of a stolen election without fighting with every bit of vigor we can muster. So that's Matt Gaetz. He's a pretty high-profile congressperson. He's got a lot of support from many of the Trump allies, and he is now enthusiastically joining this, right? And I would call him somebody who's a little bit more high-profile than I would say Mo Brooks is. And so, this is what we've been talking about for a long time here, sort of the gaining of legitimacy from other people in the government. We talked about this in the Texas lawsuit. Texas was suing Pennsylvania. In my mind, this was one of the most legitimate sort of facing things that we've seen thus far in this election litigation battle, because a lot of people were supporting it. We had a number, I think 16, 17, maybe 19 states by the end of it who were on board joining Texas in the lawsuit. We had a number of attorneys generals and so on who were all on board. Well, now starting to see that same momentum kind of build. Mo Brooks, we've got some other individuals we're going to show you here in a minute, but now Rep. Gates is also on board. We have some more. We have Rep. Paul Gosar, who says, I just left the Oval Office with real Donald Trump and several other members of Congress. Stay tuned. We have another one from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who says, Donald Trump deserves his day in court, and we are definitely going to give him his day in Congress. We have a rapidly growing group of House members and senators, she says, right? So this has been the big missing piece of the puzzle. Are there any senators who are going to join in on this challenge? Marjorie Greene is saying, yep, we got some. She says the January 6th challenge is on. American flag emoji. So here she is in a statement that she put out on Twitter. This was late yesterday.
Just finished with our meetings here at the White House this afternoon. We had a great planning session for our January 6th objection. We aren't going to let this election be stolen by Joe Biden and the...
All right. So I don't know why that clipped out. Let me see if I can play that one more time. Okay. Well, something's going wrong with that, but basically what you heard her say is that, you know, they're going to be fighting this thing. We are not going to let Joe Biden and his Democratic team steal this election, and we're going to be contesting it. So now you've got, you know, at least three confirmed people for sure who've all made the claims that they're going to go and contest it. We got Rep. Matt Gaetz. Now four now. We got Matt Gaetz, we got Mo Brooks, we got Paul Gosar, and we now have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is going to be contesting the election. And we've showed you that this is not unprecedented. Okay. When Donald Trump was getting inaugurated or getting the electoral votes were being read in Congress, there was Maxine Waters. We played a video of her, you know, waving around her written objection saying, is there any senator willing to join us? So, you know, you're going to hear a lot of this, that this is unprecedented. Nobody's ever done anything like this. Donald Trump is trying to ruin America and steal democracy. That's not so true, right? There's always objections. Everybody's objecting all the time. Whether they're joined by a senator has sort of been the linchpin. They haven't been able to do that yet. So now the big issue is coming around, you know, is there going to be a senator who's going to be joining in the House Representatives? We have another one from Representative Jody Heisey. Says, big meeting today with real Donald Trump VP, the president's legal team, Freedom Caucus, and other members of Congress. I will lead an objection to Georgia's electors on January 6th. The courts refused to hear the president's legal case. We're going to make sure the people can. So a very similar statement, right? Another sort of, you know, courts won't hear it. No problem. We're going to make sure the American people do. And they're going to deal with this thing in Congress. So this guy must be from Georgia. He's going to be speaking on behalf of the Georgians. And this is just, you know, more and more momentum. It's going to be very interesting. You know, largely we're trying to determine if there was going to be any steam behind this, and it's looking like there may be. And, you know, the snowball may be rolling down the mountain, as it were. The next question then comes from the Senate. What's going to happen there? This comes from Manu Raju, who's a senior correspondent over at CNN. And he says, okay, another incoming senator, Roger Marshall, wouldn't say if he would join the House conservatives' efforts to contest the state election results. He signed the GOP briefing backing the Texas suit, but he seems like he hasn't committed yet. He says, quote, January 6th seems like a long time away, Marshall told me when asked if he joined the effort. But another senator, Senator Thune, said to him, I think the thing they got to remember is it's not going anywhere. I mean, in the Senate, it would go down like a shot dog, is what he says. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense to put everybody through this when you know what the ultimate outcome is going to be. And so what he's talking about here is putting Republicans in a difficult position, because think about this. On January 6th, if this goes to a floor vote, now you're going to have to vote, okay? And Congress people, senators, they don't like to make difficult votes. So let's sort of game this out, right? If they object to, let's say we get one senator and we get one House representative member who object to the votes, okay? So that triggers the debate clause. They'll say, okay, we're going to contest Pennsylvania. They have to break into their different debating groups, into their different sort of caucuses, as it were, and then have a conversation about it. And then they come back for a floor vote on it. Well, at that point in time, now you're going to get all the people who are in Congress on the record. What do you think about the election? For the Republicans, this is kind of a no-win situation for them, right? If they support Trump, well, they're going to get called, thieves of democracy. They're going to get called conspiracy theorists. They're going to get called every other name under the book, under the sun forever. They're going to be sort of stained with this, you supported Donald Trump. The media will never let them live that down. If they don't support Donald Trump, well, they're going to get primaried. They're going to just get hosed. The Republicans are just, the Trump contingent of the Republican Party is just going to say, all right, well, you're squishy as hell. You didn't do anything to challenge voter fraud or electoral fraud, and we're going to primary you. And they'll probably lose that race, right? The Trump Republicans are going to put somebody in there who they support. So it is almost a little bit of a litmus test, and they're not going to want to make that claim. So we've already talked about previously that Senator Mitch McConnell has largely indicated, hinted very strongly that he and his people, his caucus, the Senate Republicans, are not going to be contesting this stuff. But we don't know how true that is, because it's looking like there may be some other indications that some other senators would be willing to join the fight. This article from CNN says this, quote, I believe we have multiple senators, and the question is not if, but how many is what Brooks said. So Mo Brooks from Alabama said, I believe we have multiple senators. The question is not if, but how many. That's a confident statement, saying that there are people out there in the Senate who are going to be joining them. He said this would defy the wishes of the Senate Republican leaders who are eager to move on, and they're urging senators not to participate, since doing so could force them to cast a politically toxic vote against Trump. Isn't that just sad? These poor senators, they're going to have to cast a vote that really, put your money where your mouth is. Do you think that this thing was fraudulent or not? Put up. How are you going to vote? We'll see if they do that. Brooks told CNN on Monday night that they would seek to challenge the election in at least 6 battleground states, saying that he needs to coordinate, and this was interesting, as many as 72 5-minute speeches that GOP lawmakers would make that day. He says that's a significant task. So he needs to get 72 House representatives to give 5-minute speeches, and then that's going to extend the deadline. He says the effort is doomed to fail, and CNN says this, of course. The effort is doomed to fail, and it would create a spectacle that the Senate GOP leaders want to avoid. If a House member and a senator object to 6 states' results, it would lead to at least 12 hours of debate, in addition to the time for casting the votes on each of the motions, potentially prolonging the fight until the next day. Senator Majority Whip John Thune of South Dakota, the number 2 Republican, told CNN House conservatives that the effort is futile and urged Republicans not to join the effort. So you can see what they're trying to do. 72 5-minute speeches. So that would really cause a 12 hours of debate, cause a lot of conversation going on, and then it would carry this over into the next day. Now, I still haven't seen sort of a way through that. I'm not sure what that accomplishes. And what are the Democrats going to do, right? If the Republicans are just sitting in Congress debating these things, are the Democrats going to partake in the debate? What is their response going to be to all this? Are they just going to leave and say, we'll just come back for the floor vote? We're not going to debate these things. Is this just sort of a ploy to give every single person who's going to make one of these speeches sort of a campaign commercial so they can just get up there and talk about whatever, but not actually do anything of consequence? Because remember, strategically, what you need to do is get rid of the votes. So they ultimately have to have a floor vote, drop Joe Biden's 306 under 270. That's the only way to really win it. I think they can talk all day long. I don't even know what the necessary ramifications are of, moving this thing from January 6th to January 7th and reconvening and having more debates about it. I don't think anything, right? As long as they just continue to move forward and ultimately count the votes will get counted, and Joe Biden will be the next president. So they got to object. They got to sustain a vote, on the floor from both houses. They have to both confirm that those votes are not going to count. Otherwise, this might just be theater. But there may be some senators, like we said, who are willing to join in on this. Several senators have not ruled out joining the efforts, including Sens Josh Hawley of Missouri, who is a big disappointment because he did vote for this Porkulus bill, and Rand Paul of Kentucky. And Trump has heaped praise on Alabama's incoming Senator Tommy Tuberville for signaling he'd object to the results. So we talked about Tommy Tuberville. He's coming in hot. He just got elected. Another incoming senator, Kansas representative, who's now going to become a senator, Roger Marshall, wouldn't say if he would join the House conservatives' efforts to contest the election results. He was a signatory on the House GOP amicus brief backing the Texas lawsuit, but he says here, quote, January 6th seems like a long time's away yet. At a joint session, any member of Congress can object to a state's results. All it takes is one House member, one senator to challenge a state's electors, and the House and Senate are required to stop the joint session to separately deliberate on the matter for 2 hours and vote on whether to exclude the contested state's results. So, we just don't know yet what the Democrats are going to do. We don't know whether a senator is going to join. There's a lot of speculation about it. Josh Hawley, Rand Paul, Tommy Tuberville. We have a clip over here from Tommy Tuberville. This was during Tommy Tuberville. No, this isn't Tommy Tuberville. This is Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson, if you don't remember, we covered this hearing previously, but he posted this. He actually retweeted this very recently, which makes me believe that he's, giving some credence to this potential, this possibility. He's talking about a judge who was claiming here in this next clip that there was a lot of fraud taking place. So let's listen in on a little bit of this. I'm not thinking we're going to play the whole clip, but here is Ron Johnson and the judge.
So the absentee voting in Wisconsin is treated quite differently, I believe, than other parts of the country. Let me read for you what the legislature found. It's in our statutes. It says that the legislature finds that the privilege of voting by absentee ballot must be carefully regulated to prevent the potential for fraud or abuse, to prevent overzealous solicitation of absent electors who may prefer not to participate in an election, to prevent undue influence on an absent elector to vote for or against a candidate. As a consequence, our laws are strictly construed, and even more so, let me read again from the law, results which do not comply with those regulations, quote, may not be included in the certified result of any election.
Yeah.
So it's very straightforward that the state of Wisconsin has taken a very different view of in-person voting with all the protections and absentee voting that has been repeatedly, including in the Carter Commission report, thought to be a source of significant potential for fraud. In Wisconsin, we just completed a recount. We had more than 2,500 volunteers, or probably more than 1,000 volunteers for the Biden campaign as well. Uniquely, we are able to examine actual envelopes that contain the ballots that are submitted by absentee voters. This allowed us to identify by person, by address, by ward. It's not conspiracy. The real names are in the record. And here's what we found. We found that there were incomplete and altered certificates. These are the certificates on the front of the envelopes that have to be exactly done correctly under our law. If not, those results may not be counted. How many of those? More than 3,000 of those identified by person were nonetheless counted, even though they are clearly invalid under the law.
Yeah.
A second category. Initials of clerks are placed on all of those envelopes. Why? Because the clerk identifies it having been properly received and identification is provided. That's the check in advance of the election. What did we find? More than 2,000 of those ballots in Dane and Milwaukee County had no initials at all, but nonetheless, they got counted.
Yeah, so he just goes on. I mean, this is a judge who's testifying in front of the Senate Governmental Affairs and something committee. And, it's a judge, right? This guy has as much credibility as anybody ever, right? He's been a Wisconsin judge for some period of time. He's out there telling you, look, we looked at the law, we looked at the rules. This is what we found. 3,000 here, 2,000 here, probably warrants a little bit more inquiry, but nobody wants to do that. And Bill Barr, who's going to be leaving, I think tomorrow, the 23rd, he's also been asked, are you going to do anything about this stuff? Are the courts going to look into this? Are you going to prosecute anybody? Are you going to assign a special prosecutor? Is the Justice Department going to look into any of this stuff? You just heard a judge telling you that there were some pretty significant problems here. What is the Justice Department going to do about it? Here is Bill Barr telling you nothing. Here he is.
Does the president have the legal authority to order the seizure of voting machines around the country?
I see no basis now for seizing machines by the federal government. A wholesale seizure of machines by the federal government. Let me just say that, there are fraud in unfortunately, in most elections, I think we're too tolerant of it, and I'm sure there was fraud in this election, but I was commenting on the extent to which we had looked at suggestions or allegations of systemic or broad-based fraud that would affect the outcome of the election, and I already spoke to that, and I stand by that statement.
Do you believe there's enough evidence to warrant a special counsel to investigate that, perhaps Sidney Powell or someone else?
Well, if I thought a special counsel at this stage was the right tool and was appropriate, I would name one, but I haven't, and I'm not going to.
All right, so Justice Department asleep at the wheel, courts asleep at the wheel, SCOTUS asleep at the wheel. That's it, right? And now it's left up to Congress to see what they're going to do, whether they're going to, hold any significant hearing that it gets any national attention. We'll see. So they're scheduled for January 6th. Going to be a lot of activity between now and then. It's looking like the Trump team is building a little bit of a Rolodex of Congress people who may be willing to join them in the fight. Now, whether that is consequential or not, we are left to see, which we will continue to do. We hope that you join us for the carried over conversation. All right, so let's take a look then if we have to sort of make peace with a Biden administration. We talked about this yesterday. If he's going to be rolling his U-Haul back up with, back into the back basement of the White House where he'll be bunkered in there for several years, we got to look at the family because they're probably going to be palling around as well. James Biden is Joe Biden's brother. We spent some time talking about Hunter Biden prior to the election. Let's take a look at what's going on with James Biden. So this comes from The Federalist. This was posted today and highlights a little bit about him being under investigation. By him, I'm talking about James Biden. While President-elect Joe Biden's son, Hunter, has dominated headlines about the Biden family business, landing lucrative overseas deals trading on his father's name, Joe Biden's brother, James, is too often overlooked in the corruption saga. It's also true that Hunter Biden was one of 3 individuals showered in a 6-figure shopping spree that was paid for by the same Chinese business leaders that were flagged as potential criminal activity by Senate investigators. The other 2 were James Biden and James' wife, Sarah Biden. And so, it's kind of amazing to me that we didn't hear much about this prior to the election, right? I didn't see this story almost anywhere, but now we're seeing a lot more of it. The Senate report, and even news people are asking Joe Biden about it. The Senate report, released in September after a 3-year investigation, detailed and expanded the public scope of Biden's family decades-long conflicts of interest featuring Joe Biden in the upper echelons of the government. By unveiling ties between James Biden and the same Chinese businessman courting the former vice president through Hunter, the family web of interest interlaced with the Chinese has given rise to new questions regarding Joe Biden's knowledge and involvement in the family business. And there's a lot of actually, it sounds like litigation is going on surrounding all of these different claims. Public reporting of the public recording of the James Biden's business deals alongside Hunter in China have almost certainly only scratched the surface. What we do know, however, is beyond the Chinese business activity that featured an extravagant shopping fee, is that James Biden is under ongoing investigation by federal authorities in Western Pennsylvania over a series of hospital deals struck under AmeriCorps Health, a firm built on the model of buying and operating rural hospitals. So we're going to be on the lookout for some of these documents. What is happening with this federal investigation? The FBI agents raided one of the now bankrupt firm's hospitals in January, along with the home of its CEO, Grant White. James Biden's home was not raided. James, a heavy investor in the company, became the subject of a lawsuit from White, accusing him of fraud and racketeering. So Grant White is the CEO of this company, gets his home raided by the FBI. He sues James Biden saying, no, this guy's responsible for fraud and racketeering. The firm was ultimately toppled to the ground. In court documents that were reported by the Federalist this spring, White accused James Biden of diverting funds for the struggling AmeriCorps for his own, partly used to save a vacation residence in Florida. White says James Biden never paid the company back as the firm was going under. And James, however, had been leveraging his family name to cultivate trust in his ability to grow the business. But the company collapsed and lawsuits followed. Now James Biden is the subject of a federal probe. There's a quote here from this article. It says, Biden told me there's not a single door in the country that we can't open. So if I wanted to meet you, the head of Google, the head of Google, it's a phone call, White said. So this is the CEO of one of these now bankrupt firm hospitals who's now testifying, who's now saying publicly that Biden told me there's not a single door that the country we can't open. If I wanted to meet, the head of Google, it's a phone call. He always represented himself as the fundraiser for his brother's campaigns. He was the guy raising money, and so he knew everybody. So this article references a different article over from Real Clear Investigations, which was posted on February 17th. It says FBI agents last month raided the home of CEO of a bankrupt hospital chain. Federal investigation disclosed documents saying he was acting as a U.S. trustee overseeing the bankruptcy case in Florida in AmeriCorps Holdings, which is the business of acquiring and managing rural hospitals. The firm declared bankruptcy on January 29th in court documents. The FBI raided White's home at a location unspecified, and the next day, one of its hospitals. A week later, there was a motion to remove White as the CEO. And it just continues to go on. The lawsuit alleges, let's go over to the next slide. Lawsuit alleges that James Biden had a prominent role in the company. One exhibit filed in the lawsuit is a photograph of the AmeriCorps business card that Biden reportedly handed out, listing him as a, quote, principal in the company. Frey alleges that when Diverse Medical Management and AmeriCorps were in talks to merge, Jim Biden promised to exploit his brother's political influence as vice president to attract international investors and make the venture successful. Lewitt is alleged to have alluded to the vice president's clout in a text message to Frey to calm the latter's worry about the legal liability to his firm over an acquisition. Quote, Jim told me, don't worry, every time someone threatens to sue you, you're with us now. Nobody is going to touch you. Every time somebody threatens to sue you, you're with us now. Nobody is going to touch you. According to the lawsuit, it was Frey's understanding that Lewitt was implying that DMM, which is Diverse Medical Management, was, quote, protected because of Jim Biden's connections. You're going to see a lot more of this coming out, right? A lot more of this sort of buying influence and manipulating influence with the Biden family. And look, there's enough smoke here that we can probably see that there's some fire burning around this family. We have Hunter Biden, we've got apparently Sarah Biden, and we've got Jim or James Biden. This sort of web just keeps expanding, and we're going to continue to follow that story along as well. So the last thing I want to leave with before we jump into the super chats is what we talked about at the end of the program yesterday. Did you go outside and look at the Christmas star? I did. I tried to. Arizona, we had pretty bad visibility last night, unfortunately, but I did go out and I looked in that general direction. If I would have had a nice telescope, which I may look at investing and getting one, but at some point, anyways, this is what you would have seen. This is the Christmas star. The great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn through my telescope just after 6 p.m. This was posted by a guy named Ed Piotrowski. 4 of Jupiter's moons, Europa, Ganymede, Io, and Callisto, and Saturn's Titan moon are visible, stacked many images for more clarity and color. Next star, Celestron, and you can see over here, that looks like, let me get myself out of the way over here. This is Jupiter and 4 different moons. And then this is Saturn, and we have another one of Saturn's moons right there, very, very close to each other. Another one from Tom Kiernan, great conjunction. Same thing, Jupiter and Saturn. Look how close they are together. And this is sort of what it looked like in other parts of the world. And many people, say this is the same kind of star of Bethlehem that was seen, many thousands of years ago at this point. So up there in the north sky, down here, Jeremy Perez, and we have the weather watchers. So one final clip we have here. You can see that it's very, very bright, beautiful picture. Got the Milky Way galaxy spiraling around. So the question is, did you see it? And did you make any good intentions for the year 2021? We are now going to go into the super chat. Let's dive in. All right, this comes from Wolfgang Deo. Says, hi, Rob. Hi, Faith. Hi, Ma. Hi, all. Bye, trolls. Good to see you, Wolfgang. Thanks for being here today. We've got Rudy with no question, but a nice super chat. Thanks, Rudy. Appreciate the support. We go on over to Sharon Quidney, who says, great show. Thanks. Why the hell are they sending all that money to foreign countries, some who could be in collusion with the CCP? Yeah, I don't know why they're sending all that money over to these foreign countries. I would like a good explanation for that. I would like a good explanation that is not from, the neocons who just say, well, we need to do this in order to get in the good graces of these foreign countries. I really don't know what the modern argument is for so much foreign aid, other than we just need to, continue to maintain these relationships. Money is, of course, a tool of leverage. Joe Biden illustrated that very clearly. There was a clip that we played where he said, I went into the Ukraine and I said, I want that prosecutor fired. The Ukrainian president said, no, we can't do that. He said, do you want $1 billion in aid? And they said, we sure do. So what do you know? That prosecutor was fired. And they came up with a bunch of reasons. They said, oh, he was corrupt and all this stuff. Joe Biden used that money as leverage in order to get what they wanted, some political aims, when he was the vice president. So is that what it's used for? It's just leverage? Well, then why are we spending money on gender programs and democracy programs? And why are we, paying for all of the technology for the Israelis? Right? Why are we sending $700 million to the Sudan? Why are we doing these things? Probably because people have a personal stake in the money. They're going to get paid for it. It's going to trickle back down to their brother, like James Biden, who's going to make a ton of money. He's going to say, I'm an investor in one of these companies, and it all comes full circle. You see how that works? They pass a big, disgusting spending bill. See how we did that at the show? Tied it all back into these malfeasance that are going on by these people in power. Not just the people in power, but their families and these shell companies. A lot of people getting rich on your dollar. Money's coming out of your wallet. We have Scrubber who says, big shout out to all the people in the chat. Big shout out back to you, my friend, Mr. Scrubber. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the support. We have Krista K who says, good afternoon to you both. I wanted to see if you take requests for videos. I'm interested in what is currently going on with Ghislaine Maxwell. So am I, actually. Yeah, I would like to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell. We are going to transition into some of that stuff. Probably maybe tomorrow. She was really trying hard to get out of custody. They filed several motions to see if they could modify her release conditions. So what that means is currently she's in custody, right? She's ultra locked down, high alert. We saw that Epstein apparently killed himself, even though probably didn't. The issue here is that she is the last key witness in a very important case. And so the lawyers are doing their very best to get her out of custody. They want to modify those release conditions. Currently, she's on lockdown. She's not allowed to get out. There was a lot of motions flying around that I saw that were trying to make the argument that she deserved to get out. She's not a flight risk. She's not a danger to anybody. People in similar situations have also gotten out, and so on and so forth. They also were referencing some personal matters, things like she needed to divorce her husband or something like that. I haven't read through them extensively, but I would like to do that, and I would happy to take that request, Krista. It's a good one, and it's very interesting stuff and a very important case. She also got COVID, I think, or was in a prison cell that had COVID. So many people were scratching their heads going, oh, great, we're going to lose the number 2. Already lost the number 1, going to lose the number 2. Would be not good. Wolfgang Deo says, Congress cannot provide actual relief because the problem is the local government. I support the random spending bill. Best time to make it rain. Yeah, they're doing well over there in Congress, making some good money, having a nice payday over there. We have Wolfgang Deo who says if AOC believed that, she would vote nay. Optics. She did vote nay. To her credit, Wolfgang, she absolutely did. I mean, I was a little bit surprised. I thought Nancy Pelosi for sure was going to get her, knocked in line, but credit to her for that. I got to tell you about AOC. She does put her money where her mouth is, and it's not policies that I would particularly enjoy, but at least she fights. At least she's out there slamming her fist on the table and saying this is nonsense. I agree with that. Probably why she has the following that she does. We have Eagle Eye Gardens who says BKNO2 was working with BLM and LK Havasu in Lake Havasu. YA, there is a wild horse and burro program in that area. It's because the private cattle ranchers want the land. For shame. So this is a little bit of a mystic super chat. I'm not real sure what BKNO2 was working with BLM and Lake Havasu. Wild horse and burro program. Okay, I know where Lake Havasu is. Been there. Didn't see any wild horses or wild burros around there. And if I did, I don't know why they need $50 million or whatever it is. Okay, I don't get it. There are people who can't pay their rent. There are people who've been paying into the federal government a lot of taxes for a long time. They need help more than whatever these private enterprises are, private cattle ranchers or any of those things. I don't know. Maybe there's a good reason for it. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. We have Adio Data with a #1 fan sticker. Thanks, Adio. Appreciate the support and thanks for being here. We have Wolfgang Deo who says they are the money printer, thus it is okay because the dollar keeps value when we do not print all the time. Optics, but they could keep going. Yeah, they're just going to keep printing money. It's all they do, like Rand Paul said. We're going to move on over to Miss America, who says, we can't afford universal health care or homes for vets, but they do this. Since money means nothing, I guess the printer goes burr. Let them eat cake. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we could do with $2.4 trillion. A lot. And I'm not sure where all of it's going, but I do know billions of dollars are going overseas. And to my knowledge, I don't know where it's going or what it's for. But a lot, it's America's money. We're just sending it throughout the world for some bizarre reason. All right, we have Sharon Quidney again, who says there seems to be some action in some of the states like Georgia with judiciary committees saying there was substantial fraud. Please comment. Yeah, it's probably about time to do a little bit of a state update and see where everything stands. Arizona actually just moved to intervene. There's an interesting lawsuit now that's taking place here where they're moving to intervene and I mean, really make some strong moves to seize some of these Dominion voting machines. And I know somebody was asking about last week, the Colorado hearing. I thought that was very good. I was listening to the Colorado hearing after a super chat came in on the show, and I was listening. It was persuasive. There was somebody in there who had a lot of credibility, and he was explaining what he saw, and he was literally saying, we have lists of names. Okay, I can tell you, and he's doing the math in real time, and he was sort of going, okay, the people here who moved out of state but voted anyways, he went through, okay, we got 1,200 names. The people who did this, we got 700 names. And he just went through and he said, look, all you need to do is look at your own data. Your voter registration rolls are garbage. You people have not cleaned these lists up in years, right? And why would they? It's the government. They don't do that type of stuff. They don't need to maintain their lists. They just, okay, you want to register to vote? Sure. Register as Bill, William, your middle name. You just register 4 times. That's fine. Come on in. And that's what he was breaking down. He was saying, look, this guy voted as Bill, as William, as W, whatever. And he had the data broken down in a very persuasive way. And so, I'm hopeful that more of this information is sort of publicly discussed in a way that has to be covered. I think that's largely what the Congressional Republicans want to do. They say, okay, we'll take a full day. We'll take 12 hours of debate. We'll just, cram this stuff down the throats of the media. They don't want to cover it thus far. YouTube wants to, implement new policies that say you can't talk about this stuff. Twitter puts the little, contextual warning. All of the algorithms have changed. Our videos are not getting recommended and suggested to watch next and those types of things. So they're just going to say, all right, fine, that's fine. We'll just go in front of Congress. We'll just talk about it for 12 hours. You got to cover it, right? The American people have to know about this stuff. And I think that's not a bad point. Thanks, Sharon. We have Matthew Riley who says, just a note to everyone, don't do no-nos with the popos. I didn't get to meet him. I'm locked in Missouri. Thanks, Matthew. All right. Well, you heard it from Matthew Riley there, folks. Don't do no-nos with the popos because you go into a very serious lockdown. Matthew Riley is apparently in quarantine in a not such a hygienic place to be quarantined. But good luck, Matthew. Hope you get out okay. Take care. Thanks for the super chat and being part of the program. I didn't know they had YouTube in Missouri jails, but that's pretty cool. Thanks for being here, Matthew. We have HTS2105 who says, quick question. Can the Trump team sue the mainstream media for libel, given that they were pushing a false narrative of Russian collusion for so many years? Not really, because Donald Trump's a public figure, and when you're a public figure, you got to prove, actual malice, like they were actually maliciously trying to undermine him. He's the president, so it comes with the territory. You got to take the arrows if you're going to be in a position like that. I don't think any court is going to grant a libel or a slander claim against anybody in the mainstream media. Remember as well, the mainstream media has a ton of protections, a ton. And if they can make even a legitimate argument or some sort of reasonable basis for why they said what they did, the courts are just going to let them go free. And they will do that. They'll just say, well, look, we were relying on that Steele report. Well, the Steele report was, kind of proven to be garbage. They'll say, well, we didn't know that at the time. So they'll escape any liability for those types of claims. All right, we have another one from AL, says 12th Amendment contingency. But in choosing the president, The votes shall be taken by the states, the representation from each state having one vote. Yes, and I agree with that, AL. It's a good point. I think this is pretty clear. And in my reading of this, I would say that the state gets a vote, right? Every state has one vote. The way the Democrats are going to want to interpret this is they're going to say the representation from each state having one vote. The representation they're going to say is the individual elected representatives. That's going to be their argument. They're going to try to interpret that as saying, well, okay, well, yeah, I mean, the representation from each state having one vote. So we have, 9 congresspeople. Therefore, we get 9 votes because the 9 congresspeople are the 9 representatives who cumulatively make up the representation from each state having one vote. I think it's a bad argument. I don't think it carries water, but it will be the argument that they make, because it's the only one that they can make if it goes to that point, if it does get down to a contingent election. We have Betsy, who says, Donald Trump just put out a statement on his official YouTube channel calling the stimulus bill wasteful spending and shorting the American people. Trump posted a video response about the Porkulus bill about 20 minutes ago, about 4 minutes long. All right, well, let's see if we can pull that up. Well, I can't click that link. Maybe we'll save it for the end of the program, or we'll catch it tomorrow. Love to see what the summary is on that, because, all right, here's Donald Trump. Let's take a quick pause. Miss Faith just got me the link. Let's blow this up. So this is on Twitter, Donald Trump.
This summer, Democrats cruelly blocked COVID relief legislation in an effort to advance their extreme left-wing agenda and influence the election. Then, a few months ago, Congress started negotiations on a new package to get urgently needed help to the American people. It's taken forever. However, the bill they are now planning to send back to my desk is much different than anticipated. It really is a disgrace.
Yeah.
For example, among the more than 5,000 pages in this bill, which nobody in Congress has read because of its length and complexity, it's called the COVID relief bill, but it has almost nothing to do with COVID. This bill contains $85.5 million for assistance to Cambodia, $134 million to Burma, $1.3 billion for Egypt and the Egyptian military, which will go out and buy almost exclusively Russian military equipment, $25 million for democracy and gender programs in Pakistan, $505 million to Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama. $40 million for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., which is not even open for business. $1 billion for the Smithsonian, and an additional $154 million for the National Gallery of Art. Likewise, these facilities are essentially not open. $7 million for reef fish management, $25 million to combat Asian carp, $2.5 million to count the number of amberjack fish in the Gulf of Mexico, a provision to promote the breeding of fish in federal hatcheries, $3 million in poultry production technology, $2 million to research the impact of down trees, $566 million for construction projects at the FBI. The bill also allows stimulus checks for the family members of illegal aliens, allowing them to get up to $1,800 each. This is far more than the Americans are given. Despite all of this wasteful spending and much more, the $900 billion package provides hardworking taxpayers with only $600 each in relief payments. And not enough money is given to small businesses, and in particular restaurants, whose owners have suffered so grievously. They were only given a deduction for others to use in business their restaurant for 2 years. This 2-year period must be withdrawn, which will allow the owners to obtain financing and get their restaurants back in condition. Congress can terminate it at a much later date, but 2 years is not acceptable. It's not enough. Congress found plenty of money for foreign countries, lobbyists, and special interests while sending the bare minimum to the American people who need it. It wasn't their fault. It was China's fault, not their fault. I am asking Congress to amend this bill and increase the ridiculously low $600 to $2,000 or $4,000 for a couple. I'm also asking Congress to immediately get rid of the wasteful and unnecessary items from this legislation and to send me a suitable bill, or else the next administration will have to deliver a COVID relief package, and maybe that administration will be me, and we will get it done. Thank you very much.
All right, so there's Donald Trump. And, you know, his list of the pork was much better than my list of the pork. He had some very good details in there, game and fish and all sorts of nonsense. Now, if you were watching Donald Trump, then you were listening to that. If you were watching me a little bit, I was bouncing around on my little screen, my little thumbnail, because we have a special guest who just walked in and surprised me. I want to introduce you to my mother. My mom is here. I've told you on the show, I've talked about her many times. I've explained that she's pretty tough. When I ask for a motion to do a live stream on Christmas or Christmas Eve, it's probably going to be denied, but she's here. She came in, so I want to invite her over. So come on over here, Mama. Let me introduce you. Her name is Mary Ann. So come on, scoot down so you can see us.
Hi, everyone.
So this is my mom. Say hi.
Hi, everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
All right, so my mom and I love my mom more than anything in the world. She's the most important person on the planet to me. We do a lot of amazing things together. Currently, she leads an organization called ericshouse.org. So check that out if you're wanting to hear or learn more about her and what she does. But she came, you brought a couple things I see over here.
I did. Well, first of all, I wanted to bring some Christmas cheer into your office.
Okay.
So it feels a little bit like Christmas. And also,
all right,
some Christmas cookies.
Okay, so what? So explain what these are.
Well, let me pick one up and show you. So we have Trump cookies.
Okay, so
we have one cookie, the Patriot.
Okay.
And we have one cookie, the Orange Man.
The Orange Man.
And I thought that since our polls are not reliable at all, we could take a poll right now. Which one do you prefer? Trump, the Orange Man, or Trump, the Patriot?
All right, so there you have it. I would say throw your suggestion in the live chat. And these are Christmas cookies?
These are Christmas cookies, very special Christmas cookies.
All right, and where are these going?
In your stomach.
In my stomach, okay. All right. And I guess we got to leave it up to the viewers then.
Yeah, let's see what the viewers have to say.
They have to decide. So let's go on over to the chat and let's see what everybody has to say on the cookies. The Patriot cookies or the Orange Man cookies. Let's cue this up and let's see where we're at. Let me pull this open. I don't know why I didn't have this open. All right, so we go down to the chat. Let's see what people have to say about this. We got Trump equals Agent Orange, Patriot, Trump, Patriot, Orange Man. We have Orange Man cookies. We have such an adorable mom. I love the Trump Patriot cookie. How adorable, Marianne. Never thought I'd support anything. Okay, we have Orange Man. We got, it's kind of split. A lot of Patriots.
Yeah, looks like it's about half and half.
A lot of Patriots, but a lot of Trump Orange Mans as well. So you can see we got a pretty diverse audience.
Definitely.
A pretty diverse audience. We have Sharon Quidney who says, hi, Rob's mom. We love Rob's show. Merry Christmas. Patriot, the Orange Man. Orange Man for the win. Your mom is awesome. Orange Man cookie, Patriot. So we have we've got a lot of activity here.
Well, let's show them again just to make sure everybody gets a good second look.
All right, so there they are.
Orange Man, Patriot.
There we go. Patriot, mom's rule, Orange Man, rad. Did you bring milk? No milk. So we'll have to, obviously these are going to go out for Santa, right?
Yes,
so
a few of them.
Yeah, a few of them.
Hopefully you're going to eat some of them.
I'll eat some of them for sure. Lava Java Lava says, let Dominion decide. Let Dominion decide. Guess Guess Dementia Joe didn't get a cookie. Mama looks young. Double vote, double dip in the milk. Yeah, you could get 2 votes,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. You can vote more than once.
You can vote,
right.
yeah.
You can vote for as many cookies as you think you might eat.
Yeah, vote for whatever. Vote for both. It's just a free for all. It's a cookie free for all. So, Mom, can you tell them a little bit about Eric's House? Can you tell them about what the organization does?
Well, Eric's House helps people who have lost somebody to suicide or addiction or sudden loss. So we know that when somebody loses a family member, a child, a spouse, a friend, a sibling, it's really a difficult road to have to recover from. And we have an organization that helps people learn how to deal with their loss, integrate their loss in a healthy way, and hopefully find joy and happiness again in their lives. So it's a great organization, and Robbie, thank you for sharing it with all of your viewers. I appreciate that. Of course. If you know anybody that needs help, you can find us on ericshouse.org. We're a nonprofit. We help anybody who needs help. And Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to all of you. Stay safe and stay healthy.
All right, Mama.
Okay.
All right.
Love you. Bye.
Love you, Mom. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, and I'll see you in 2 days.
Yeah.
2 days. All right. So those are the cookies. Very, very nice, Mama. Thank you. I'm going to wrap up. I have a few more super chats. Are you out of here? Okay. All right. I'll call you after. Love you, Mom. Bye. Okay. The office will eat them too, for sure. Thanks, Mama. All right. So that was my mom. What a nice surprise. And she timed that. So she was out there. I could hear Miss Faith out there, and I could hear them laughing about things. So they must have waited until right when we finished the Donald Trump response to the stimulus bill. And then she just kind of came in here. So totally unexpected. Thank you for indulging us on that. My mom is, like I said, she's incredible. The organization that she does run, it's ericshouse.org. And so she brought Patriot Cookie and Orange Man Cookie. And, you know, in the spirit of the election, all the cookies in the world, all the votes in the world, it's all good. So thank you for indulging me on that. Very, very little surprise. Let me see if I can get back on track and go back to the super chats. All right, so check out ericshouse.org if you want to learn more about what they do. Really amazing group. Many of you don't know, but I lost my younger brother to suicide back in 2016, and Eric's House was born sort of as a way to help people figure out what to do afterwards. You know, there's a lot of resources that exist for people who are sort of in the throes of addiction, or there's a lot of mental health services. I think they could all be improved across the board, but you know, there's a lot of resources there for people. Whether they choose to use them or whether they have access to them, that's a different story, but they do exist. Once somebody dies, it's kind of game over, right? And families don't know what to do. And so we found ourselves in that position, and then we started Eric's House. I think that was in 2017, right after my brother passed away. And for a long time, it was just my mom and I. We would go to, restaurants. We'd go to like hotel lobbies, and we would just sit there because we would do these monthly meetups, and it would just be her and I just sitting there going, well, apparently nobody else wants to meet up here today, right? It's just you and I, and that's okay. We'll just have a conversation, and we'll offer each other some support and some healing. And then slowly but surely, we had additional people who would come in. So our twosome turned into a threesome, then we had a foursome, and then suddenly we had a group of people, and now we actually have a house. It's called Eric's House. There's a lot of healing that takes place there. Things like, counseling, grief counseling, and some, we have a labyrinth there that people walk, and a lot of prayer, a lot of healing, men's groups, women's groups, some interesting things like, aromatherapy. We have a psychic medium who helps a lot with helping people sort of process their grief. So it's an amazing place. A lot of healing takes place there. And my mom is incredible. So once again, thanks for indulging me on that. All right. And now let's go back to the super chats. So, of course, the very next super chat comes from our friend over from France, Jamal Boussanet, coming in with a little bit of levity to carry on from my mom stopping by. He says, I don't know why everyone complaining about 600 stimulus. Free PS5s plus 1 ounce of sticky icky for the nation. I'm about to load up on Sony stock. Make America game again. So that's true. That's a good point. I mean, what does a PS5 cost? Was it $500 or so? Leaves another $100 to go and get some sticky icky for the nation. Maybe the world would be a little bit better place if we all had PS5s and whatever sticky icky is, because Jamal Boussanet seems to be pretty okay right now. We should all be a little bit more okay. Thanks, Jamal, for giving us some guidance on that. We have L4G Custom Fabrication says, Mike Pence, I promise we will keep fighting until every legal vote is counted. This comes from Turning Point. We have another super chat coming in from Curtis Bartle that says, keep it up. Thanks, both of you, for that. And yeah, we're curious to see what Mike Pence does. You know, there's some speculation around whether he's going to do anything sort of out of the ordinary because he is the president of the Senate. He does have the ability to, he's in physical possession of the votes, and he's sort of the operator of that proceeding. He's he's the president of the Senate. He's the vice president. He runs that electoral voting proceeding, that electoral counting proceeding. So many people are sort of speculating that maybe he does something. Nobody really knows what yet, but we'll see. We have L4G Custom Fabrication who says, what do flat earthers say about this event? Not sure which event we're talking about. Oh, okay. Yeah. The Christmas star. Good question. I don't know. I watched some of the flat earthers. I think what they say is that we're on sort of a plate, and above the plate is a dome. And on the dome, they project stuff onto the dome, sort of like we're inside of a, what are the space things? Planetarium. Kind of like we're in a planetarium. We're really living in this ice wall engulfed plate, and the stuff that you see in the sky is just projections, just like you have in your 3-year-old's room. I don't have a 3-year-old, but if I did, I'd probably put one of those things that shoots the stars up on the ceiling on the wall, and they spin around so that he can go to sleep at night, right? That's, I think, what their theory is. So what do they say about this event? I don't know. It's probably just another projection up there, and we're all fools for believing in the fake sky, whatever that is. We have AL who says, love your show. Thanks to Faith as well. Any chance you could cover Make Americans Free Again lawsuits against the CDC and others if they go anywhere? Yeah, I'd love to. I actually have not even heard about that. I had not even heard about that litigation. I am getting more and more interested in this litigation that is taking place against the government and against big tech. Basically, any of our, I would say, institutional areas of power. We may transition into covering some more of those topics. Good question, AL. We have Cheryl Myers who says Carolyn Biden, James' daughter, was involved in a $100,000 credit card scam in 2017. Stories on Gateway Pundit. Just got a slap on the wrist for a DUI. Yeah, I'm going to suspect that this web has been going on for a long time. Remember, Joe Biden has been in office for like 37 years, if not longer than that. Very long time. There's going to be tentacles that just go around to basically everybody. The question is going to be, who does anything to uncover it? If Bill Barr or Donald Trump is not going to appoint a special counsel to investigate any of this stuff, and Biden sweeps into office and now he controls the Department of Justice, going to be pretty difficult for them to go after him, right? Because he runs the department. We'll see what happens there. We have another question coming in from Brian R. Says, I know you're against martial law and the Insurrection Act and whatnot, but we would be having more rights in a lot of these states if we had martial law. Yeah, it's an interesting point, Brian. I understand the frustration here. I understand the idea that, when the government stops in upholding the Constitution, we sort of have almost a social contract here, right? The government's going to afford us these rights. We're going to live peaceably and we're going to pay our taxes and be good citizens. But if they breach their end of that contract, what is the recourse for the people? What can be done? Martial law is one of those things that really does make me nervous because it seems like it's moving quickly. One of the key features, I think, of our constitutional republic here is that it moves slowly and it's very difficult to consolidate power, right? We have 3 different branches of government. They should be all fighting for power. I think largely on the federal level, they are. Locally at the state level, not so much. The legislature, bunch of quislings, most of them. And so what they do is they just give up all of their power to the executive branch and let the courts tell them what to do. They don't fight for their power in many ways. It's sort of, they're getting run roughshod by a strong executive, at least in Arizona and many other states. We're seeing this with COVID, right? We're seeing this with the people are pissed about all of these lockdowns and all of this sort of, I would say, diluting of certain rights, and it's all at the hand of the executive branch. The legislature has done almost nothing to curtail any of the power anywhere across the country. So when we talk about martial law, now we're really consolidating power. We're taking those 3 branches. We're just saying, no, out out the window with all those, and that's going to go over to the military. What I like about the three branches is it's slow. It sucks. It doesn't work very well. It's hard to get anything done. Unless, of course, you need to pass a 5,000-page bill in 2 hours, then apparently Congress can do it. But, for the stuff that really matters, it's difficult to get stuff done. It's almost impossible to amend the Constitution. It's very difficult to consolidate power, and I think that is by design. It's a good thing. When you get rid of that and you bring in the military to just exercise total control, that is concerning to me. Now, there are other things that can happen. And, many people are also talking about things like civil war or even secession, right? And what, maybe there's a mutually agreed upon sort of secession at some point, right? Countries break up and things like that. I would not like to see that. But if there was a mutually agreed upon secession, say the Texans want to say, we're out of here. And the Californians say, good, you Texans are terrible. Get out of here. And they just sort of agree to separate without any violence, just a mutually agreed upon sort of distancing from the government. I think that would be better than martial law, because now we're talking about local self-governance making the decision. We're not instituting one overarching power over the entire nation. So I would be more open to something like that rather than martial law. Good question, though, Brian. We have Wolfgang Deo, who says, could for science be a legal defense, like a sociology thought experiment, and actually test crying fire in a crowded theater? What would happen? Well, what would happen is everybody would run out. Somebody would get injured. You'd probably get sued. They would sue you for causing a disturbance. You'd probably get charged with a crime, something like disorderly conduct, which would be in Arizona a class 1 misdemeanor. It's problematic. Could go to jail for 6 months. Those are just some of the potential outcomes. Probably also be sued for whatever injuries. So you'd have to come out of your pocket. Sued civilly, charged criminally wouldn't be good. And I don't think that a court would allow you to use the defense of saying for science. I think they'd say, great. What'd you learn? You'd tell them what you learned, and they would just slap you with a criminal conviction and then issue a judgment in the total of $100,000. Good question, Wolfgang. Brian R. is back again. He says, we don't need it so the president can keep his promise and defend us and the Constitution. And wait, and don't we need it so the president can keep his promise and defend us and the Constitution? We have these executive branches breaking the law, and no one probably does anything, is probably what he was going to finish off with there on that super chat. And so I understand it. I get it. I mean, I get the idea here that, Trump and Team Trump is aggrieved. One potential option is to bring the military in. I just don't like that idea. Unfortunately, I think that would not go well. I think that what would happen ultimately would be most of the country would essentially join in opposition. I think a move like that would really consolidate most of America against that type of action. And I think that would be not to Trump and his team's interests. Eagle Eye Garden says, with Pennsylvania and SCOTUS and Trump, would they be held for treason if they do not look at Donald Trump's claim in regard to the change in Pennsylvania Constitution on extension? Would they be held for treason? No. So it's not going to, they're not going to be held for treason because this is part of their duty. The Supreme Court has the ability to deny cases. They don't have to hear every case that comes in. So if they're not going to look at the claims and they have a legitimate basis for why they denied the writ of certiorari, that's it, right? It's not necessarily treason. Now, if Judge Roberts was saying we're going to deny the Texas lawsuit because China gave him $100 million and now, he's manipulating the Supreme Court docket, that is treasonous. But there's no evidence of that at all, nor would I ever expect there to be. We have Nathan Rhodes, who says, thoughts or covering NAACP versus Trump, the RNC in, Michigan? I'm not sure if I've seen that lawsuit. I know that the NAACP joined a lawsuit. I'm not sure if that was out of Michigan, though. There was one lawsuit that had a number of different intervenors trying to get in on the case. I think the NAACP was one of them. The ACLU was another one of them. I think that was out of Michigan. I think we talked about that on this program, but it's not coming to mind right now. What I'm guessing is probably in that lawsuit are a lot of the allegations of racism. In Michigan, we saw that. I think that was even during the legislative hearing. Wasn't it those people who were calling everybody racist? Your white privilege is showing, that council member was saying on camera, because one of the people who was on the board of elections was objecting and then reversed the objection. And then once the votes were cast, came back out and reversed the reversal. I think that took place out of Michigan, and there was a lot of claims of racism, right? Because the allegations of fraud were taking place in largely African-American cities. So the allegation was, you're singling out the African-Americans, therefore you're racist, which is to be expected. Those types of arguments are very, 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 very prevalent in all political discourse. All right, we have another one from Brian R., who says, don't we need it so the president can keep his promise and defend us and the Constitution? We have these executive branches breaking the law and no accountability by the judiciary. So what do we have to lose? I only see what we have to gain. Most of us are already living under tyrannical rule. And another one. So why not fight it this way? Martial law has been called before numerous times, and we have a president now where I think he could be responsible. It's a good question, Brian. I don't know, right? I understand your perspective on it. I sort of answered that. I kind of saw where your question was going, and I think I answered most of that. I understand the frustration. I get it, but I made this point yesterday. Let's say that Donald Trump institutes martial law, okay? And he wins re-election and he's the next president. Great. We have another 4 years of Donald Trump. What happens after that? What happens when another Democrat is a president and they want to institute martial law? They want to bring it in. They want to claim that the Republicans are doing something bad or that something else justifies martial law. Well, now we have a precedent where somebody who you, Brian, believed was reasonable. I tend to agree. I don't think Trump's a dictator. I don't think he's a megalomaniac. I think that there's a lot of, sort of exaggeration about his personality that I just haven't seen any evidence of in policy. So I just don't buy that. But it's not always going to be Donald Trump. The next go round, it's going to be somebody else. And the question is, are they going to be as reasonable and responsible as Donald Trump? Probably not. And eventually we get somebody very, very bad. We don't want that. We have Helen Alera, who says, thank you for what you do, R&R Law Group. Thank you, Helen. I appreciate the support. Hope you're enjoying your holidays. We have Bully, who says, completely support Trump using emergency powers. So, Brian, there you go. There's a lot of people out there who do think that is necessary. We have Wolfgang Deo, who says, I too was surprised with the Honorable Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez de Twitch saying, nay, I guess she was red-pilled. Wow, maybe indeed. We have some other ones coming in hot for my mama. We got Patricia Nab. We have Biff Ford, who says for Rob's mom. We got another one from Pinky number 2, who says for Rob's mom, Merry Christmas, lots of hearts. Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated. I'll make sure that Eric's house gets all of that. KCT says, I'm not happy about any money at all going outside the U.S. What is the reasoning for that? That's a good question, Casey. I don't know. I don't know what the justification is other than it's leverage. So you get to have some leverage ability with these foreign governments. Maybe they give the U.S. some sort of a benefit, right? We say, we're going to give you $700 million, Sudan, but you're going to let us put a base here, 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 and here, and here. Okay, so that, sort of we're getting something out of it that serves the national security interest of the United States. And it's a good argument that what do we need 10 bases in the Sudan for? I don't know if that's the case or what the reality is there, but how is that really benefiting America? And do we want a massive, military footprint all around the world when we have a lot of problems here at home? Other than that, I don't know what the basis is. Probably political favors, a lot of grifting, a lot of Congress people making money off of the back of the American people. It's about the only real reason I can think of. It's not a good one either. All right, another one from Wolfgang Deo, who says, as a flat earther, I say it's just a chance occurrence every 20 years. Above the plate and the ice walls, I also was the VP of an Astro club. All right, so Wolfgang, chiming in to support that flat earth theory, as Wolfgang would. Thanks, Wolfgang. We have another one from Biff Bifford, says, can you be forced to be vaccinated as a condition of your current employment? So I think, Biff, this is TBD. I think this is to be determined because I think a lot of these rules are still being fleshed out. I did read a headline somewhere. I didn't dive much into the article, saying that there's a movement in many states to make that legal, right? To make that something that an employer can do. Makes me a bit uncomfortable, but if your place of employment wants to tell people what they can put in their bodies, that's one way to do it. I'm not particularly comfortable mandating that for our entire team. But think about this, the alternative here, and we mentioned this in this Porkulus bill, they didn't include anything that allows them to protect employers from liability for COVID litigation. So let's say, for example, I run a law firm. Somebody comes into our office. They're a potential client. We have an interview with them, do our consultation, see if it's a good fit. They get COVID somewhere, right? They sue us. They say, well, I was at the R&R Law Group. Must have got it from you guys. What are we as a company supposed to do? How can we prove that they didn't get something from us? Almost impossible to say, you didn't get it from us, right? We don't have anybody who has COVID here. We sanitize all of our stuff. We're following the CDC protocols. But if they want to sue us, there's no liability protection for us. So now, what is a business owner supposed to do about this? Just say, okay, well, in order to protect ourselves against any potential liability from anybody coming into our establishment, and we don't have a lot of people coming in and out of here, but think about some of these other, facilities. Think about, a small clothing store or a jewelry store where people are trying stuff on and moving things around, or even a small, mom and pop, whatever store that does have a lot of foot traffic, people coming in and out of the retail store, right? They're a sitting duck for these types of claims, and then it's going to cost them thousands of dollars to defend against a lawsuit that they really can't prove much, right? Because the evidence is just weak. How do you say, I didn't give somebody something? I didn't transmit that virus to them? Almost impossible claim. And they're going to say, I got it from you. And they're going to make their reasoning. And it's a huge problem. So many employers, even though they may not want to mandate vaccinations, they may do so just to protect themselves from future liability. Just to say, nope, look, here are all of our employees. They all have their COVID vaccinations. Here you go. You clearly didn't get it from us. Go sue somebody else. So, the employers may not want to do it, but they may not have any choice because of potential liability. They're not a law firm like us that has some know-how on how to handle those types of claims. Many innocent businesses may become subject to this, and Congress did nothing to protect them. We have Michael MJL says, is McConnell untouchable? Thanks for keeping it real, man. He's pretty much untouchable, I think, at this point. McConnell has the GOP corralled very nicely. He won his reelection this last go-round by a significant margin. We've got McConnell for another 6 years. On some things, I think he does a good job. He did a good job with the judiciary. He filled a lot of the seats with various judges. I mean, really, really aggressively did a good job for Donald Trump. The federal judiciary has been almost entirely remade in this past 4 years. One of Trump's biggest accomplishments, I would say. And hats off to McConnell for doing that. He's got, he wrangled up enough votes to get 3 Supreme Court justices appointed in one term. Pretty impressive. But then he passes garbage like this that is just embarrassing. I mean, if any one of these Republicans ever says, I'm a fiscal conservative, they're all going to run for office at some point. They're all going to come back out and go, I'm a fiscal conservative. America's got a spending problem. Any one of them who voted yes on this thing, I think, is automatically disqualified, which is unfortunate because there were some good people there who did vote yes for it. We have KCT who says, who wants to vote for Trump now? Dems, that's who, $2,000 a person. Want to know what's even more than a one-time payment of $600? A job. Hashtag open America. I agree with that, Casey. Yeah, and now, it is going to become a spending game. Trump wants $2,000 or $4,000 for couples. I would certainly support that over sending $700 billion to the Sudan. But again, that's not the problem, right? This is a Band-Aid solution, which I think is okay, right? If the government is going to tell you can't work for a certain period of time, they should foot the bill for that, right? Otherwise, let us do our own stuff. Let us manage our own lives. And that's the point where I'm at now, right? No more lockdowns. We did the lockdown nonsense. You told us already 15 days to slow the spread. It's been like, what is it? 9 months now, okay? 15 days to slow the spread. It's been 9 months now. And we now have a second wave. We have a new strain allegedly coming over from the UK, another round of lockdowns. Like how long is this going to go on for? And how much money can we keep printing to stop the bleeding for the American people? It's not feasible. So at some point, we're going to have to reopen. We're going to have to get back to work. And I'm ready for that. Sounds like you are too, Casey. We have Miss American Mom 89 who says, if Dominion sues the Trump campaign, does that give us the right to discovery, like a full forensic audit? Yeah, so it would certainly open the door for that. So we're seeing some of that with Sidney Powell. Smartmatic has now made the claim that anybody who says that Smartmatic was involved in any election malfeasance, they're making allegations that they're going to start suing people. Sidney Powell rightfully said, please file a lawsuit, please. Because it's going to open a whole can of worms, which is why I don't think that they will actually do that. If they did file a lawsuit, then one of the defenses that Sidney Powell would have is to say, look, I was true in what I said. And the only way that they're going to be able to disprove what I said is by showing us the files, show us the records. And then it's kind of going to open the door where they can have a discovery battle over what to disclose and not disclose. And we haven't seen that yet thus far in this election stuff. We saw a little bit of it in Arizona when they were doing a recount and they were doing an audit, sort of a select audit on those 100 ballots. We got a little bit more evidence actually presented, but largely we haven't seen much of that in all of the other litigation around the country. So a lawsuit where Sidney Powell or Donald Trump or somebody was a defendant, that would be a different type of lawsuit that would open the door to more investigation. Very good question. We have Keith Don. Wait a minute. Where do we go? Oh, I just skipped all the way to the end. I did not mean to do that. All right, we have Keith Don who says, what is your thoughts about Mitch McConnell's relationship with China through his wife? Is that an explanation for his lack of support for Trump? You know, I don't know so much about that connection, that relationship there. I really can't speak to that with any authority. I would just say that I think Mitch McConnell is a very, very middle of the road Republican. He's part of the ruling class. He's part of the oligarchy. He's plugged in to all of the big money, all the people who really run things. He's plugged in. He's their guy. And they are not with Trump anymore, right? I don't know that they ever were with Trump. Trump was sort of an aberration in their plan. They thought it was going to be Hillary. Hillary was going to, be the same thing that Obama was, which was really not much different than anything that George W. Bush was, right? It's two sides of the same coin. The Republicans get in office, they raid the Treasury for 4 years or 8 years. They put the Democrats in power, then they raid the Treasury for 4 years or 8 years. And it's the same thing that happens with the next administration. Trump was an aberration. This is now a return to form, and the Republican people, the Republican Congress people and senators, they were not particularly happy with Donald Trump, right? There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for him when he was running. They all thought that this was not ever going to happen. And so he didn't get much support. Once he did get elected, they were just going to deal with it for 4 years. And at the first sign of trouble, they were all just jumping overboard, abandoning ship because the Trump ship was sinking. And I hope the voters remember that when the next election comes up. Thank you, Keith. We have Brian Hack who says, no martial law, please. If you are under tyrannical rule, work to undo it civilly. The tyrants only have the power we let them think they have. Yeah, and I agree with that, Brian. I really don't like the idea of martial law. I understand the frustration, but this is one of the beautiful things about America is we have the ability to petition our government for a redress of grievances. We can go vote, whether you think it's fraudulent or not. You can do it locally, which will have an impact. You can speak out. You can start a channel, start writing, start blogging, start hosting little Zoom events with other like-minded people. Get more politically engaged. I cannot tell you how many people that I talk to who are really upset about what's happening in the world, but aren't talking about it, aren't doing anything about it, aren't, getting on a YouTube video and just putting your commentary out into the world. I'm encouraging more people to speak out, speak up, because we have a little bit of protection when we have some higher numbers, but a lot of people, they don't want to stick their head out because they're going to get smacked down and smacked down hard. And I get it. I've been seeing what that feels like, and it's not particularly comfortable. So, it is something that you have to sort of step outside of your comfort zone and get a little bit more civically engaged. And I think that is really the answer. We want something that's permanent. We don't want, martial law to come in here and, modify a bunch of things around the margins, put the guy that we want in power, and then leave that door open for the next tyrant, whoever that may be, which there exists to come and exploit those same tools. We just want to be very careful about that. Thank you, Brian, for that message. We have Aaron Seavey who says it's time to start a new party. I'd be down for that, Aaron. And I think if Donald Trump is not successful in this election, I think largely he's going to be considered a martyr. And many people, myself included, are going to be very disaffected with the Republican Party in general, already highly disaffected with them. And so, they may form something new. We'll see what that looks like. We have Lazzaroni Macchiaroni who says, what if Pence doesn't show up on the 6th? Can things move forward? Do they need a quorum to count the votes? So they need, yes, I do think they need a quorum. If Pence doesn't show up, I think it just goes down to the second in command. So whoever is the second, there is a second in command. I can't remember his name right now. But if the president of the Senate is not there, there is somebody else who fills in for them, because the president of the Senate is not usually at these things, right? They come for tiebreakers. Every time that Congress is in session, Mike Pence is not there. So he just comes for ceremonial purposes, or when there's he needs to cast a vote. He's the tiebreaker vote if the Senate can't reach a majority opinion. So if Mike Pence is not there, they just bring the number 2 in. It's killing me. I can't think of his name, but that's what would happen. I think it would go on even if Pence doesn't show up. We have John Kreutz, who says 100% behind the litigation, but martial law is too far. Insurrection Act in Portland, maybe. Yeah, they're still going at it there in Portland, aren't they? Pretty interesting. We have a couple more. Before we wrap up, we have Matthew Riley, who says, thank you for what you do. I'm 19 and I'm wanting to run for Missouri's 7th in 2026 or 2028. Do you have any advice, as I'm tired of even the Republican establishment and am wanting to break it? Well, Matthew, oh my goodness, great question. So I don't know how useful my advice would be. I've never run for office. I applaud you for making that commitment right now at the age of 19. That's outstanding. And I would love to see more of that. What I would recommend, I think at this point, what's been useful to me is to study the old books. I keep these around. I have right here, I have the Common Sense by Thomas Paine. We read some of this, the very first paragraph. I read this on the show. Brilliant work that really details a lot of the principles that made America work and that I still think work. We have the Federalist Papers that was written by some of the most brilliant people during the founding era, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and you can read those documents. And I would encourage you to dive into some political theory, read some John Locke, read some Edmund Burke, some of the social fabric concepts. There's a lot out there. Even if you're feeling a little bit saucy and you want to dive into some of Ayn Rand's materials on objectivism and pitting self-interest versus self-interest. It's one of the biggest concepts from James Madison. I think that was in Federalist 51, where he was talking about, you want mankind is self-interested. That's okay. That's not a bad thing. Things are better when everybody knows that, right? If we want to believe that these Congress people are really looking out for us, they really care about us, the little guy. They really care about grandma voting. They really care about the small business owners. If the $600 stimulus bill doesn't give you enough indication that they really don't care, you look into some of this other this idea that all of these people are self-interested. That's okay. We're going to pit ambition against ambition. And as a result, society is going to become stronger. And James Madison talked a lot about that. Ayn Rand talks a lot about that. And I think it's uncomfortable for people because people want to feel like other people care about them. Like, oh, they care about grandma. Look at this congressperson. They care about me. They care about little old me. There's probably some of that out there, but largely they're self-interested. And I think once we all realize that and we have that uncomfortable conversation and we realize maybe the government is not so interested in our own personal lives, we can actually have real conversations. We can talk about what needs to get done and how best to move forward. So I would read. And then I would also speak. I would learn as best you can how to master the English language. I am a far cry away from mastering the English language, but I practice it. Part of this show is practice. It's repetition. It's me getting up here every day of the week and speaking extemporaneously, trying to process issues on the fly, answering questions. It's just practice. And if you build a system like that where you can get up and do something that you enjoy doing. I love talking politics. I love these issues. I have a lot of fun doing it. And it's literally improving my skill set, getting on here and having to sort of mumble my way through a couple hours with you. And if you can build those systems into your life, you will improve yourself dramatically, and you'll be able to use that in your congressional run, which I'm excited to hear about. So please stay in touch. And when you get your campaign website up, let me know where I can make a donation. Thank you very much, Matthew Riley, for being here and for that question. We have one more coming in from Brian Coker, who says, according to the Governor Track website, AOC voted yeah on the stimulus package yesterday. Just wanted to correct that if no one else has. P.S. Love the show. Interesting. Okay. So I also found that. I showed you the slide. I also pulled it from the Government Track website, and I'm not sure if I got the wrong page, because I literally that slide that I showed you came from governmenttrack.gov or track whatever that website was, and she had a no vote on there. And so we may be looking at two different things. This may have been an earlier version of the bill, or she may have split her votes. So she may have voted nay on the COVID portion, but yes on the spending portion of it. I'm not sure, but thank you for that. So keep that in mind, folks. It's confusing, and this is part of the problem, right? We don't even know how our people voted. I went on the government track website, says nay. Brian Coker, who I have no reason to doubt he's not right, he says that she voted yeah. So it's hard to find this stuff. Go look on the government track website. You're going to see they make it very convoluted because the bill goes, first of all, the bill has been floating around for months. Since January, then 6 months ago they started working on it, and it changes names. It goes all these different committees. It's really hard to follow, and that's by design. They don't want you to know how it works, because if you knew how it worked and you knew what a grotesque display of incompetence, I don't even think it's incompetence. I think it's deliberate. I like to say incompetence, but it's not. These people know exactly what they're doing. They wait until the deadline when there's a government shutdown looming, and they just give them 2 hours to vote. They all get in line. That's by design. They just didn't accidentally run out of time. This is their full-time job. This is the only thing that they're supposed to be doing, is running the country, and they can't do it very well. They wait until the last minute before they cram a bill down your throat. So thanks for the correction there, Brian Coker. I appreciate that. And we're going to wrap it up here, folks. I'm going to go call my mom and see how she's doing after her big debut on Watching the Watchers Live. Before we sign off, I want to invite you once again to hit that subscribe button. If you have not already done so, we do go live at this time every day. We want you to be here and with us. If you want a copy of the slides and a free copy of my book, you can find those in the Discord server. This is my book. It's called Beginning to Winning: How to Fight Your Case and Succeed in the Criminal Justice System. It's mostly for people who've been charged with a crime. If you want to know a little bit more about me, I have a sort of an introductory paragraph where I tell you a little bit about my story. The PDF is available in the Discord, totally free. So go on over there and check that out if you want it. If you do get it on Amazon and you find it to be useful, I would love a review on there as well. I want to thank you so much for being in here with us today. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for letting my mom come on here and display the Trump cookies. I'm going to go have a bite of one of those right now. I'll let you know tomorrow which one I pick, the Orange Man or the Patriot. We'll see. Other than that, folks, one more reminder: if you know anybody in the state of Arizona who has been charged with a crime, that's what we do. That's our day job here at the R&R Law Group. We're in Scottsdale. We offer free case evaluations. We're very, very passionate about helping people get through the system and get things back on track. We don't want people to have their lives ruined because they had a little bump in the road in their lives. And that's what we do every day. We're very good at it. We'd be honored if you trusted us enough to send a referral our way. We'll take very good care of them. Other than that, my friends, I want to thank you once again for being here. I will see you tomorrow. We're going to be back here. It's 5 p.m. Arizona time. It's going to be 4 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. Central time, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. I hope to see you here. Have a very wonderful evening. Sleep well. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.